We're just going to have a quick look at convergence zones and troughs, and this is on the Yachtmaster weather syllabus. This is a UK Met Office synoptic chart for the Atlantic and Northern Europe. It's a real chart from January 2024. What's of interest here is the high northwest of Ireland. I've highlighted Ireland in green there, and the high is highlighted with a blue circle. And that's a relatively weak high, and it's influencing the air over Ireland. So you've got a northerly airflow over Ireland and over the Irish Sea. Just winding on now 12 hours, and you can see that that high is moved further south. It's now off the west coast of Ireland at 1018, so it's not a very pronounced high, but it's enough to keep the Atlantic lows away, and it's creating this relatively slack northerly airflow over the east coast of Ireland, west coast of Wales and the Irish Sea. And if you look then at this line here, which you see on a chart in these conditions, you don't often see it on the chart, but it is of huge relevance to sailors, particularly in this area, and that's a convergence zone or a convergence line. And what's happening there is you've wind from the north-northwest or north-northeast coming off Wales, whereas the wind coming down the Irish Sea. And just at the coastline there, the two winds, the two slightly different winds converge, and it's creating a squeeze, and it's creating accelerated wind. That's picking up moisture, and as that moves south, that moisture drops as precipitation, so it's creating this line of cloud. Let's have a closer look. So that's the photograph taken on the same day, taken from near Carnshaw Point. So looking due east over, you can see Tusker in the foreground there, and in the distance you can see that convergence cloud on an otherwise blue clear day. So that's the satellite photograph at around the same time, and you can see the bare wisps of cloud in the middle of the Irish Sea. But as you move further east and over the Cardigan Bay there in front of Aberystwyth, and then down over the North Pembrokeshire coast over Pembrokeshire, and then the Gower Peninsula and down into the Bristol Channel, you have this line of cloud, and that's what that line on the chart means. Let's have a closer look here. And at the same time and separately, and I'll come back to the convergence zones, you have these smiley faces here, and these are frontal troughs, which you get in a weak airflow between, say, a low and a high, or sometimes between two lows. Often they have showers in them, very, very weak fronts. So just looking at that high again and moving on. This is a chart from another date, but as you can see, the weather phenomenon is almost identical. So it has a name. It's the Pembrokeshire Dangler. What a wonderful name. And it's the convergence zone that you get in northerly winds. And you've the breadth of the Irish Sea there, just north of Anglesey. You've the Anglesey, and then you have that widening then again in Cardigan Bay, and then that narrowing down to the North Pembrokeshire coast, and that's what's creating the convergence. So that's why there's the concentration of showers over Pembrokeshire. That's why it's quite a wet county, and it's that squeeze between the Wexford and the Pembrokeshire coast that's causing it. It does then dangle down into the Bristol Channel, does pick up moisture, and goes down very quite specifically over East Cornwall and West Devon, not even the full of counties Cornwall and Devon. So you can get very, very heavy rain in places like Bodmin Moor and, you know, along the Tamar Valley there, which is on the border between the two counties, and quite catastrophic conditions. There was the Bodcastle floods many years ago, with flash floods and very heavy snow, whereas East Devon or out in the West Cornwall towards Land's End and Penzance, and that can be dry. So it's a very specific localised weather condition. It is of huge relevance to us sailors, because if you're crossing over to the Welsh coast from Ireland, or you're sailing up the Bristol Channel, or sailing either in north or south of Devon, you have this impact. So you've the impact there, you know, approaching Plymouth, which is a popular sailing area, that has an impact. So you've got to consider the Pembrokeshire Dangler when you're sailing or racing in that area. For further information, go to the shore-based notes. There's not a huge amount of information there. It's on page 130. But the Weather Handbook G133 has quite a bit on the effects of land on wind and around islands. It really is worth reading. For a cruising sailor, or particularly for a racing sailor, it's really valuable information. There's not so much information about the troughs. You won't find them in the shore-based notes, but you will find them. There's mentions of it as part of the whole Depressions in Practice series, and occlusions on page 40 in the Weather Handbook.